enough about is the change in the dynamics in Congress, right? So for a long time, it was okay to be just a complete reactionary nut of anti-crypto person in Congress, right? You could just say all the old, oh, there's, bad things happening on,
Raoul Pal's journey through macro and crypto. Join me, Raoul Pal, as I explore the macro, crypto, and exponential age landscapes on the Journeyman. I speak with the smartest minds in the world so we can all grow smarter together. Guest Dan Morehead. Dan, great to see you again. Feels like 2025 might be a pivotal year. Reminds me a lot of 2017. Regulatory clarity, macro shifts, and politics are shaping the markets in fascinating ways. The US, as a global regulatory leader, has a big influence, and with recent changes like the largest ETF launch and upcoming elections, it feels like the stage is set for progress. Let's dig into the macro landscape. You and I, as macro guys, have seen the tides shift before. What's your take on 2025 and how the current administration might shape things? Preparing for 2030, I believe we're heading toward an economic singularity by 2030. That gives us around 6 years to prepare. I've created a report to help you secure your future beyond 2030. Click the link below to start your journey today.
So it's a tax you don't see. Most people don't understand it. The price of scarce assets keeps rising because you're lowering the denominator. You know this from emerging market days. Most people don't really understand this mechanism, but that's what happens. So, your wages don't go as far and the assets keep going up to make housing unaffordable, and 8% a year. But the flip side of that is without doing that, you end up with a huge crisis, which is even worse. So it's a rock and a hard place, right?
No, I agree with you, and we have seen this movie before in the EM markets that we were in all those years, and inflating your way out by printing more money is really the common way people get out of this. And so I think it's going to happen, and that's why I think you're right that when you talk about the value of scarce assets when priced in paper money terms keeps going up, right? Gold's at a record high, stocks are at record high, real estate's record high, Bitcoin's record high. Maybe they're not moving. It's the price of paper money that's going down, right? And Pantera once did a graph that probably old Twitter feed would have of the price of all those things, price of the US dollar, priced in bushels of corn, a share of the S&P 500, gold, an ounce of gold, and it's pretty much the same graph. It's the price.
It's going to be, because we saw some noise on the tape today that it might not just be Bitcoin, it might be other US crypto assets, XRP or whatever it may be, Solana. What's your thoughts on all of this? Is the US going to be openly buying crypto? Or is it going to be stuff that they've seized and ongoing seizure from criminal stuff? What do you think?
The US does own 1% of all the world's Bitcoins already. And we actually participated in the first US Marshal Service auction in 2014 or whenever that was, which is really cool to see the US Marshal Service star on the Bitcoin page, So this is just my own professional hunches, but I think what will happen is the U.S. will do a strategic reserve, but just Bitcoin. The analog would be old school gold, Fort Knox. We have an enormous amount of gold stored as a currency reserve. We don't have palladium or silver or anything else, right? So it's easy to get one very well-known thing that has 60-something% market share through. So if I were a betting man, I would say it's just a Bitcoin strategic reserve, not kind of blockchain generally. And there's actually 3 different ways the president could, or the United States could, acquire new Bitcoins. The first one is the president could decide to direct the U.S. Marshal Service to stop selling. And I think what's lacking is that because of the lack of clarity, some things like trading of tokens went offshore to places like the Bahamas, and we've had some negative consequences from that. So I think any clarity that the agencies in the United States could provide will be helpful. And I had served as chairman of Bitstamp for a long time, and it is difficult to manage a business when there's nothing written down. You have no idea what is a security, what's not a security. So as soon as there's more clarity on that, that will help. And then I think the bigger part is to help institutions get engaged in the space. In 2021 and 2022, a lot of very big institutions were doing a ton of work going to get engaged. Some did some small investments in the space. And then, we had, Terra Luna and FTX and all these bad things happen. And with the lack of regulatory clarity, it kind of scared off a lot of institutions and they put it on ice. That's my biggest prediction, is that once we do have regulatory clarity, bigger institutions will come back to the space over the next, say, 2 years and really start investing in it in a real way.
I also think the finance sector will go all out for this as well, because they know how much efficiencies within this, whether it's in the payments or whether it's tokenizing equities and all other kind of financial assets for settlement, clearing, everything else. It feels like that is going to be, whether it's this cycle or next cycle, but
is actually happening in the real world.
Yeah, and the other thing that we're looking at Real Vision and where the world's moving is, I think we will disrupt asset management itself. The idea of crowdsourced, tokenized asset management, where people form an opinion about maybe this is a basket to invest in, you spin up a token, and it creates the ability for people to create their own product. There's no real reason we have asset managers in many instances. Any group of smart, well-educated people can get together and try and outperform versus hedge funds or benchmarks or whatever it is.
Oh yeah, no, I love that concept that if there's some talented managers wherever they are around the world, you can have all kinds of league tables that show their risk-adjusted returns versus everybody else, and money can flow to the better managers. All that is possible, and it's certainly coming. And my favorite example of that was the Constitution DAO. Remember that a couple years ago?
Yeah.
Where in days, a group of people that did not know each other, didn't trust each other, had no reason to be connected, decided they were interested in the same thing, purchasing the last privately held copy of the U.S. Constitution. They got $40 million together in a few days, and they went into Christie's or Sotheby's, I forget which auction house had it, and competed with it. And the fun bit about that, it's simple investment strategy compared to venture capital, but it's the first step.
Yeah, it's super powerful. So in terms of Pantera, what kind of investors are you seeing? And are you seeing it more on the VC side, more on the liquid side, hybrid? What are you seeing out there right now? I don't think it's been the best capital raising environment last year. There was some money, but not a great deal. But what are you seeing? What's the trend in who's coming in?
Yeah, so that's a good question that I actually don't know the answer to. We were fortunate to raise our last fund right before the bear market in 2021. And so we had a lot of capital to invest when everything was really cheap. We're going to finish up our current fourth venture fund by next summer. And so we're raising our fifth fund right now and through 2025. So we're just at the beginning of those conversations. I would say, though, they're much more constructive than they were 3-4 years ago when we were doing it last time. And in particular, the Middle East, the GCC nations, are much more interested than they were earlier. And for them, it actually makes a ton of sense because it's essentially a frontier market that has $3 trillion in market cap. Like not going to go get an account at Chase Manhattan Bank, right? So they need a natively crypto way to do business. Blockchain is it, and so there's a ton of applications for payments within the AI space. The other one is, AI is best if it's not controlled by one person. We've tried that in social media and other things, and it's a little tricky. And so I'm a big believer that AI is going to be way better if it's decentralized, both in governance and ownership. And so we've invested in a handful of projects like Sentient and Sahara that are trying to help the ecosystem for decentralized AI. And then the last bit of that is the models have grown so fast, they're so big, and there's so much hardware being thrown at it. They've essentially learned from everything that's free on the internet. They've read the internet and learned from it. And blockchain is great at incentivizing people. And you need incentives to get more data into the next generation of models. And so we've invested in a handful of projects that help incentivize people to contribute more data than they currently just have out publicly.
Yeah, because there is so much private data that everybody's got in all sorts of things that we don't accrue value to or don't think it has value, but we don't know what to do.
A digitally native payment system on social media. So it's one of those things, and we actually did try it gosh, 7 years ago with Kik Messenger's Ken ecosystem, right? Like, it's a great idea that we tried earlier, maybe too early, maybe got bad luck with regulation back then or something. But it's one of those ideas that has to happen. We think Ton has a great shot at doing it. If they don't do it, somebody else will do it.
And also interesting to see Manny Stoltz coming in as the CEO, and I've known Manny for a long time, you probably have as well, and their move towards the US, because there was always a lot of concerns around Ton because of the ecosystem and the secrecy that was involved in all of that. But it seems like they're coming towards the US and not away, which is very interesting.
No, I think that's good. And again, that's part of the whole thing about regulatory clarity. Just helps both sides, right? Like, if we both know what's permissible, what's not permissible, then, we can create things and make products to help consumers, right? Like, we're trying to help people get things done. And the alternative are really expensive. Migrants spend a month's wages on their remittance company. I agree that the change is pretty stark, because President Trump did go pro-crypto in early May. So if we were sitting around in April of last year and said all that was going to happen, that you would not have gotten many believers. So that I would have to say is the biggest surprise, the biggest change. The other thing that I think is not yet thought enough about is the change in the dynamics in Congress, right? So for a long time, it was okay to be just a complete reactionary nut of anti-crypto person in Congress, right? You could just say all the old, there's, bad things happening on, Bitcoin or whatever, all that kind of old crazy stuff. There's bad things happening with the US dollar, the SWIFT, cash, there are bad people, and they sometimes use all these different payment systems. So, there were a lot of negative people, and they really influenced policy. In the midterm elections, the crypto super PACs went 34-4, but no one seemed to notice. It just kind of, they did a good job, but it kind of went below the radar screen. Maybe because no senators, were up. But this time, a handful of anti-crypto senators get that the policies of the Fed and Congress for the last 4 or 5 years inflated away the ability to buy a house for a lot of people. And, you own a house, I own a house, so I'm fine, right? But 35% of Americans don't, right? Like, and they just got, really bad policy driven to them. And so it is rational to buy crypto, right? Like, all my kids' friends, when they're like, hey, should I invest in it? I'm like, yes. Like, it really is a rational way to get invested in the space. And then as each generation cohort, gets older, they'll be buying more. And that's why I'm so bullish on crypto for a lot of reasons. But a huge one is that the current generation of, I was going to say 20-somethings, but you can buy crypto with your smartphone when you're unbanked, right? Everyone always thinks of unbanked as some adult walking around Africa, right? No, it's a kid in New Jersey, right, is unbanked, right? But they can buy crypto. So I do agree with you, and that's why I think it's a huge kind of socio-political issue, and I think it's amazing that the Democrats didn't. Well, what the community is doing together, I really do want to just kind of see what I can do to kind of nudge it, to keep pushing it over the edge.
You can see the smile in your face that you actually just still love it.
No, it's great. And every day something new and crazy comes up. It really is fun. And sometimes you get maxed out and like your brain's about to overheat, but it keeps evolving. And people often ask, like what inning we're in. We're really in the first inning still. Most funds have zero exposure. Most people, have nothing, really meaningful in the space. So we're still, I think there's decades more to go. And maybe I can't keep doing this for decades, but like, it's fun to do it, to kind of get it to escape velocity, right?
Yeah. And as I said, how I think about it, and when we talk about it in our fund of funds, it's really, we're 3% of the journey. If it's going to 100 trillion and it's only 3, you're like, when people say, is it too late? You're like, it's only 3% of the